Tomorrow, I love you. Tomorrow, I will be here talking about relapse. Okay, so it's going to be slightly different, of course, than tonight. It's on relapse, and I hope not only that you can come, but if you know somebody who is struggling either with the program or just staying sober. And by the way, I never talk just about alcoholism. I am credentialed to talk about eating disorders and sexual abuse. And so there's a whole lot of stuff that I'll do on that too. So that is tomorrow, as you know, from 12 o'clock until 3 o'clock. And again, I think we should show our appreciation to the Alcohol Foundation for putting on this beautiful program. Let's show our appreciation. Jim, Walter, that applause was for you and for the foundation. I would like to go on, if I may, and talk about something that many people find very hard to talk about. Would somebody switch the lights off back there? Jim, will you do the lights? God love you, Jim. No wonder you're thin. Okay. He's running around all the time. Never has a chance to eat. He's not eaten for 4 weeks. Now, let's say the top, and then we'll get the rhythm. It's not what you eat, it's what's eating you. Say it with me. This is one of the most important things that I can say to you about eating disorders. It's a cliche to say that food is a drug, but food has an effect, especially with women. Why women? Because, and it's changing, but at one time, women generally did not smoke a lot. They did not smoke. Especially in the years that you can remember, in other words, you know, your grandmothers, etc. Women did not go to bars to drink. Of course, some drank at home, but they weren't drinkers. Drinking and smoking was what a lot of men did. Now, that's a generalization, but what I'm trying to share with you is, just like more women, more girls are abused than boys. Now, it doesn't mean to say that there are not boys who are abused. But much more prevalent is the sexual abuse of girls than boys. So when you're hurting and you don't smoke and you don't drink and you don't take heroin, you've got to find something to do. What do you think that is? Eat. And I'll tell you what it does, like a drug. If you're lonely, if you're hurting, you can stuff yourself with food, and just for a while, not for long, but just for a while, you numb the pain. So that's why, usually, it's not always true. Remember this, when you talk and give a lecture, but I'm talking generally. If I meet a woman who is consistently 20 pounds overweight, there is pain in her life. Now, I don't know what it is. Okay? Now then, with that goes the other, and that is compulsive overeater eats and puts on weight. Eats and puts on weight. And then some learn how to eat and purge. It's called bulimia. That's when you're eating in pain, so you've still got the pain, but you want to look good. So you actually look good. But the pain is not that much different. That's why when I've worked at eating disorder units, and by the way, some people knew me at an eating disorder unit. I do not want to mention them by name, but they're here and they've shook my hand. But when I worked at eating disorder units, you would have compulsive overeaters and bulimics in the same groups. Because it's a similar disease, except one is purging. But the actual amount of eating is often similar. And by the way, before I forget, this gentleman here, Kevin, introduced me, and I would only know, this guy has traveled, stand up Kevin, 200 miles to be here tonight. Came all the way from New Jersey. He knows about religious abuse. He bought the book on religious abuse. He is a victim of it. He knows about it, and that's why he wanted to come over here tonight when he knew I was over here. And you're welcome, Kevin, and I hope I see you tomorrow with your sister. Is it your sister? Your cousin. Okay. So all of you don't, and by the way, sometimes people say food addiction and alcoholism is not the same. You've heard this 1,000 times. They say you don't have to drink, but you do have to eat. Now, in a way, the compulsive overeater is trying to find a little loophole here. Because what they're saying is, it's not the same. And usually, by the way, that's how they'll talk. It's not the same. Then I'll say, what do you mean? It's not the same. And I'll say, why is it the same? Because you don't have to drink alcohol. But you do have to eat. Now let me tell you something, I don't agree. Every one of us here drinks. It's what we drink. We make choices around drink. Some of you are drinking coffee, some of you are drinking water, some of you drink juice, but you don't drink alcohol. You make a choice. That's all I'm saying for the recovery for an eating disorder. Very rarely do people binge on broccoli. Now I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's rare. You don't often get people, I got to get some more of that cabbage. Hurrah, cooking the cabbage. People binge on ice cream. People binge on donuts. People binge on chips. People binge on hamburgers and cheese. My weakness is cheese. You know, you put cheese over anything and I'll eat it. Okay? So, now, notice I've not mentioned anorexia. I will tell you this, that I have had very, very little success with the anorexic. My heart goes out to the anorexic. An anorexic needs a psychiatrist. Okay? I don't mean they don't need OA, I don't mean they don't need a therapist, but it is because the control and the death wish of the anorexic is normally beyond ordinary comprehension. They can literally will themselves to death by systematically not eating. I mean, they become literally down to 87 pounds, just a bag of bones, and usually they are very angry and they are very hurt. Of course, there has been for many sexual abuse, usually of the father, not always. But I'll tell you, whatever is hurting them, it's hurting them deep, and they have taken because it's different than bulimia. See, bulimia is to want to look good, and people who are models, but they usually maintain a model about 110, 116 pounds. When they start to drop below 100, that's when you start having some real problems. Because you realize that even in your 20s, you're not having a menstrual period, your whole body changes. it's almost like you are drying up the very energy of life. Because most anorexics will not be having their menstrual period. Not on a regular basis. So, and by the way, it can also happen with men. Okay? The few anorexic men that I've met have suffered physical or sexual abuse, and many of them have real issues around their sexuality. All I'm sharing with you is smart to get a psychiatrist. But with OA for the compulsive overeater and the bulimic, I'm very confident that people can get well. But it is making choices. I don't know anybody, and I know a lot of people in the theatre. Jamie Lee, I was with Jamie Lee Curtis last week. Of course, Anthony Hopkins is in the program, who lives in LA. I know a lot of actors, and I know a lot of actresses. I don't know any that are looking good that don't have a food program and exercise. Don't think for 1 minute that you can look like they look without exercise and without a food program. You must do the same. So you make choices. Okay? You don't, and ask yourself, what do you need as opposed to what do you want? Okay? And we need far less usually than we take. And I promise you, if you make just some because this culturally in the East Coast, this is not Los Angeles, you have a very unhealthy, usually food habits. Like Europe, where I come from. In other words, it's a lot of stews, it's a lot of meat and potatoes, it's a lot of gravy, it's a lot of that stuff, a lot of bread, dumplings, a lot of stuff like that. As opposed to, say, for example, where I live in Los Angeles, whereby there's a strong emphasis on, nearly everybody I know is, and not a diet, I'm talking about a food plan. And I promise you, you will, in a very, like 4 weeks, you'll start to see a big difference. If you cut out the bread, cut out the butter, cut out the desserts, stay with the food that you like, and just eat healthily. Okay, now, it's your choice. It's like smoking. You know, it's like smoking. I'm very intuitive, and I'll show you why in a few minutes. Okay, and you can be intuitive too. I'm seeing people die through smoking. And yet they've got recovery. Now, I'm telling you, none of this is making sense. The same program that took you off a drug, whether it's alcohol, and never mind, don't talk about this. That's denial. You don't want me to come all this way to tell you lies. Okay? I've met people with cigarettes in their hands saying, I'm so glad that I found this program. It's changed my whole life. And I'm so glad that Jesus or God give me a break. Get a life. Now, what I'm saying to you is, if you say to me, anyone says to me it's hard to stop smoking, hard to stop eating, hard to stop drinking, hard to stop taking heroin, I agree. But it's harder not to. And if you don't believe me, come and see how you die if you smoke. And it's never been a quick death. And if you're an overeater, how to live your whole life whereby you look in the mirror and you can't stand your body. Now that's hard. What I'm asking you to do is not hard. Now I've not got it here. I don't know whether you have any copies of it there, over there at the bookshop over there. Do you have any copies of Meditations for Compulsive People? Okay. If you've got the copy of that, that's the one. Meditations for Compulsive People deals with sexual addiction and eating disorders. It's under the meditation cake. And for gambling too. Now, the only reason I'm saying this to you is, often with eating disorders because there is a correlation between food and sex. And the correlation is they are oral. Okay? Most sexuality, sexual relations other than intercourse itself is usually around the oral. Okay? Now I don't have to go into detail, and I'm sure you're very pleased I've not brought slides. But I think you're getting my drift. Okay? Now, in other words, it very much involves these sensations within the mouth, which are undoubtedly pleasurable. That's exactly what is activated with food. Okay? And some foods more than others. Okay? But there's a psychological connection. Okay? That's why you can give. Psychological connection is very powerful. I can give somebody a placebo, which means that I'm not giving them a drug. I'm actually giving them sugar and water. But I can give you a placebo, and if you believe that the placebo is the drug, you start acting as if you've taken the drug. In a similar way, you need to break the habits and understand what's going on. Now, if you've been sexually abused, here's the connection. If you're, I'm going to say a woman, but it works for man. If you're a girl who was sexually abused, maybe you now withdraw. In other words, you do not really want sexual relationship. This is not what you talk about, but you don't. So you sabotage yourself. You do not want to be attractive, because if you make yourself attractive, then the man is going to come to you. That's not what you want. So you sabotage it with food. But at the same time, the food, here's the little tricky part, the very food that is sabotaging is on some level your sexual gratification. That's why, I'm not being funny, but you'll have some candies called better than sex. And they're usually around chocolate or ice cream or something like that. Now, all I'm trying to share with you is that if you're an alcoholic, you may not understand what I'm saying. You might, but you might not understand what I'm saying. If you have an eating disorder, you know exactly what I'm saying. This is what you have to let go of. Okay? Got enough chips there? Here I am talking about it, and I hear this. Look, God, it could only happen in New York. I'm talking about it, and I'm hearing this. For those of you, I want to touch on this because it's very important. Some of you have never heard anybody talk about religious abuse, and I am sorry. Because in my experience, most people have experienced it. It is a form of ghetto mentality. We're right, you're wrong. Especially some Christian churches, and they're usually the ones that are the most rigid. Now, some of you had monks and priests and nuns and ministers that were very loving and very supportive, and you just love them to death. But unfortunately, not everybody did. A lot of people finished up in the priesthood who did not like women. Not that they were gay. There were two women they liked. They loved their mothers and the Virgin Mary. And they treated every other woman badly. I don't know why. Maybe it was the abusiveness of their controlling mother. I can tell you I have met such priests. And they treat women badly. Okay? So, all I'm trying to share with you is, and by the way, there are some ministers who do this. I was on national television criticizing the Baptist church when I heard that the Baptist church on national television said that women needed to be subservient to their husbands. This was about 3 years ago. Now, excuse me, there are many words that women need to hear, but subservience is not one. Of course, there is a text from Scripture that St. Paul says, whereby St. Paul says women need to be subject to their husbands. But of course, that needs to be interpreted. Otherwise, you can start. St. Paul also said, slaves, be obedient to your masters. Nobody takes that, I hope, literally today. If you interpret this, you must interpret it. Many, and some of you have daughters and granddaughters. Many domestic violence takes place where the man quotes Scripture in order to justify his abuse. Of course, it's sick. But Tina Turner talks about Ike Turner beating her up because when he beat her up and hit her, he got sexually excited and then he would have sexual intercourse with her. You must understand that for some men, violence, okay, that's why people are attracted to violence and to rape. I don't ask any of you to look at pornography, but if you did look at pornography, so much of the pornography is around violence towards women. That stimulates, for some reason, I don't say it doesn't stimulate females, that would be silly, but it certainly definitely stimulates a percentage of males. So you have to be very, very careful, okay? And the church needs to be careful when it starts telling women who they need to be subject to. Okay? If you heard the message, you were never good enough. You could never be good enough. You sought for purity. When I was in the Catholic Church and the Episcopal Church, some nuns still whip themselves and some priests still whip themselves. To be honest with you, it's absolutely quite sick. No? I mean, if you didn't start off a sadist, you'd finish up one. Any church or any priest or any bishop who tells you that you mustn't think and you mustn't doubt or you mustn't question is asking you to be a slave. The church is the history of change. Change comes when somebody says, I think. Now, you may think ahead of the priest. That's not your fault. And you shouldn't be punished because you're asking questions that the priest should be asking. Here's an example. 20 years ago, Pius XII would never have gone to Jerusalem to apologize for the world. This present Pope went to Israel and apologized for what has been done in the name of the Catholic Church. What we do not know is how many millions of people suffered. How many millions of people suffered. Those of you who go to Mexico and go to the Mayan ruins, you must realize that Christian Spaniards went to those countries and raped, pillaged, killed, and destroyed the religion of Mexico, which was the Mayan religion. Same in Africa. Afro-Americans in this country have a special relationship with Christianity, and there is no doubt there is a great devotion that Afro-Americans, probably more than any other group, have to Jesus and to Christianity. But be under no doubt about the fact that the religions, and they were beautiful and wise, just like Native Americans, the religions of Africa were destroyed by the colonization of Africa. All I'm trying to share with you is that in the name of Jesus, horrible things have taken place. Women who thought that if they didn't have the child baptized, the child would go to hell. Priests who seemed to indicate that. All that crazy stuff that went on. Boys, and usually they selected nice-looking boys. Boys who could serve at the altar and be altar boys, but never let girls be altar boys. Now it's changing. What kind of a message does it send to girls who want to assist at the altar? And what kind of a message does it send to boys? Religious abuse is real. What you have to ask yourself is, did you suffer it? Believe you me, ladies and gentlemen, the magic that if you light candles, pay money for there's so many things. That God would you'd get God's attention and God would reward you. Believe you me, the magical view of God is not healthy. God does not fix you. Let's all say it together, God is not a codependent. We do not have to have conflict with science, medicine, or education. What silly people we are if we think that God only works through the church and He doesn't work through psychologists, scientists, writers. Have the big view of God and you'll be a big person. Have a small view of God and you'll become a bigot. Believe you me, sex is many things, but sex is not dirty. And it is abusive for a girl of 12 years of age to think that her menstrual period is the curse, and to be referred as the curse, which is the curse of Eve. It is real sad, and there are some women in this room who, when your mother told you about your menstrual period, you could tell your mother was ashamed. And you can pass that shame on from the mother to the daughter. Believe you me, we have to be able to talk about sexuality because sexuality is part of who we are. But I wonder how many people, and you do not have to put your hands up, but I wonder how many of you came from families that never really talked about sex and kind of gave you the message that other than for having children, sex was dirty. Believe you me, you were abused. Those are just some of the issues that I want to mention. Of course, it affects every religion. Ayatollah Khomeini tried to control the Muslim people in Iran. Extreme Hindus killed Mahatma Gandhi. He was killed by a Hindu. He was a Hindu himself. This has got nothing to do with Christianity. All religions try to control people's minds. If they can have your mind, they believe they can have your soul. And what they are promising you is eternal life or eternal damnation. And people buy into it. Some of you watch TV and you see these crazy ministers saying, if you do this or if you do that or if you send money, a blessing's going to come. And I remember once I was sitting, where was I? I was in Oregon. And there was this evangelical minister on TV at 11 o'clock at night. I'd just got in. I was tired. I was sitting on the bed. And I was just flipping through, the way you do. And he said, and he's in Houston, this guy. He's a Texan guy. And he said, I can see you. Sitting on the bed. You've just come off an aeroplane. I think, how the hell does he know? And then he says, you're holding back your money. I know you're holding back your money, but send your money. And I thought, and I got nearly bought into it. Now don't let anybody take your mind. Your mind is your freedom. And don't go. And a religion of fear is a religion that is not worth having. The 12-step program is very clear. Find a God as you understand God. And this is a spiritual awakening, not a religious awakening. Don't judge people who are different than you. Remember what AA says. Every time you point one finger at another person, there's 3 fingers and a thumb pointing at you. Be smart. Unfortunately, I don't think there are any books here on religious abuse, are there? Have you got When God Becomes a Drug? Or The God Game, It's Your Move? What a shame. Maybe they just sent the... Here's the steps to recovery. The steps to recovery are stop, look, change. Let's say it together. Come on now. Last time. first thing you can do when you're wanting to let go is, first of all, you've got to stop. This is why we go on retreats. This is why we take time out for meditation. This is why we have what's called a quiet day. You've got to stop. You're never going to know what's going on in your life if you keep running. So if you keep running and you keep being so busy, you're never going to figure out what's going on in your life. First of all, you stop. And it says you need to slow down, you need to reflect, and yes, those of you who have a journal, start to use it. Stop. After you stop, that's when you start to look, especially if you're a man. What messages did you get about men from your mother growing up, if you're a girl? What were you told about people of color? What were you told about people who were black? You don't think it's affected you? Don't be silly. Of course it's affected you. For black people, what were they told about people who were white? Only by looking at the hard questions will you ever start to be able to let go of the stuff that holds you back. What were you told about gay people? What were you told about sexuality? What were you told? I know a man, very good man, Episcopalian, uses women, for sex. But I can tell you, he's a good man in the sense that in the community, but he's a victim. Because he would never ask his wife to do for him what he asked the women to do. And in his crazy way, he thinks he's showing respect for his wife. Of course he's not. So all I'm trying to share with you is that many men, I suppose women too, but many men who are unfaithful to their wives often ask the women that they're with to do things they would never ask of their wife. I wonder why that is. And it's obviously a reflection on your sexuality. And how you can tell is when people, and there's a huge amount, some people probably here, who are getting involved, especially on the internet, in the whole sexual pornography and sex and all of that. Some of the stuff that they're looking at would absolutely surprise you. You never would think it. But then again, we know, because of our recovery, that there is so much of who we are and our needs that have never come to the surface. Take a penetrating look at what's going on in your life. Who do you really want to be? Where do you want to go? Who do you want to go with? Are you happy with your job? Are you happy with what you're doing? Are you happy with where you live? Or do you feel a victim of life, so you're stuck here? Are you already at a young age, 40, 45 years of age, thinking about retirement and whether you have enough money for retirement? In other words, you're not living. You're preparing for you're missing life. Now, you heard me say alcoholism, eating disorders, sexual addiction, sexual abuse, codependency affect you physically, mentally, and emotionally. Therefore, you need to have healing physically, mentally, and emotionally. That's why I talk about nutrition. That's why I talk about exercise. That's why the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous talks about HALT. Don't get too hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Take care of your body because it's yours. Take care of your mind. What you put into your mind. The kind of things that you are thinking about. What kind of prayers are you saying? What kind of meditations are you using? What kind of stories are you reading to your kids? Because what you put into your mind affects you. if you start the day, say yes to life, meditations, a positive approach. I wasn't joking when I said you start the day right, you will follow it through the day. Last but not least, feelings and emotions. I do not want to see the hands go up, but say you're somebody who came into AA, but you've never had therapy. I have to tell you something. AA is not therapy. Please say that with me. AA. Eric, say it again. Last time. The last thing you want is to be getting therapy from some guy in AA who's got 5 years. Oh, I know what you need to do. I tell you, it's a support group. You wouldn't go to AA to have your tooth out. Hey, Jack, would you just take this tooth out? Just give me a filling. Let me tell you something. A good therapist, a good psychologist, and of course there are so many different types of psychologists, and they will take you back to your childhood. You will relive the pain and the wounds of your life in order to be free. In order to be free. In other words, believe you me, ladies and gentlemen, maybe you are recovering from alcohol, but you have never been in therapy. And maybe that's why still the anger, still the control, still. And I don't mean you can't achieve things with steps. But it's all the difference in the world, a good therapist looking at you and saying, what does your anger look like? What was the relationship like with your mother? Have you become like your mother? Have you settled in your marriage? And it's a horrible thing to just settle. Ladies and gentlemen, once you start to take care of your body, and you start to take care of your mind, and you start to take care of your feelings and your emotions, boom, 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 then you release the X factor, and the X factor is intuition. The X factor is the gift of insight, which, by the way, all spiritual people, and we are spiritual, have, to see beyond the surface. You will recognize people who love you. You will recognize people who will hurt you. That's why you hear some people say, do not go to that energy. Keep away from that energy. A person who's in touch with their X factor, they are able to go and they know immediately. You can feel in the house. You can feel in the house. You can feel when you have a meal with somebody. It's called the X. Jesus had it. When people came to Jesus, and especially remember the woman at the well, she says, I'm not married at the moment. He says, very well, you are. You tell the truth. You are not married. You've been married 6 times. And the man you're living with, you're not married to. See beyond the surface. Now, the sad thing about this is perpetrators have it. Now, this is the sadness. It's not just spiritual giants, men and women who have it. Sickness has it. Okay? Because the perpetrator knows the one child in the whole playground who's lost. And they will find that child. The middle eye, you see it painted on. The middle eye is called the all-seeing eye of Hinduism. Sometimes you see Indian women painted with the middle eye. It is the eye for you to seek your beloved. And your beloved, meaning the one that you are entrusted to, and it takes many forms, but there will be your beloved. If you do not find your beloved, if you do not find your peace, you will never be at rest. Stopping the drinking and stopping the using was just the beginning of the spiritual journey. Now the adventure really begins. Some of you, probably most of us, including me, and I'm doing this all the time, so I'm in a constant process of change. I have just given up my church, my physical church, of being the parish priest after 9 years, only because I can't do this national work. You can't do everything. The congregation was so terribly sad because we'd built it up and we had recovering people and meetings, but I can't be in my church on a Sunday and be over here like I would be on Saturday night and get back. I was getting tired out on red eyes, flying in and out. Something has to go. Say it with me. Come on, say it now. What you have to decide is, are you prepared to let go? And here we come to the stop, look, change. Here's the change. And I cannot tell you, I know some of you are not writing this down, but create the plan. If you do not create the plan, write down the plan. It's like writing down your objectives for the day. You don't write them down, I promise you, you will not achieve them. All successful businessmen and women write down their plan. People who hover between 20 and 45,000 a year never write their plan. You settle for 45,000. You've got to be a fool. Create the plan. And by the way, spiritual people are the ones that should be the millionaires, not the bad people. I'm serious. Spiritual people always do something. Why would you want the crazies to have the money? Look at the fact. You know why you're here today? Because a good man who saved his money has invested in it, and you're able to have this foundation. I don't know anywhere in the world where I speak for less than $35, $45 per session. This man has covered the cost. Believe you me, we spiritual people are about abundance, not just abundance of blessings, but abundance of prosperity. It's your sadness if the priest never told you this. The message that priests give is that somehow or other spirituality is about poverty. You've got to be joking. Got to be. Even Jesus knew better than that. Who did he spend his... Jesus didn't spend his time with poor people. Who do you think fed him? Joseph of Arimathea, Nicodemus, okay, Zacchaeus. Being serious, my mother, she's very smart, she's 88. She used to be a suffragette, my mother. My mother, you know what she says? She says the only people that tell you that money isn't important, they have it. When you've got it, you can turn around to people and say, money's not everything. But if you now can't feed your kid and you've not been on a vacation for 3 years, I mean, think about it. Think about it. Somebody said to me, I'm really sorry, I'm going to try and save up in a couple of years. I may be able to go on a cruise. Now, not being funny, the cruise is, about $900? I was in your mall today. You can't get a good man's suit for less than $600-700. That's the price of a suit. Now, I can get some cockamini suit that after about 3 months you're going to wish I didn't have it on. What I'm trying to share with you is, Prosperity consciousness is part of the spiritual plan. You know, the people that Jesus got angry with were the people who hid their money in the sand, buried their money. He commended the ones who invested. Have you invested in your prosperity? If you haven't, you have embraced poverty. Okay. To create the plan, what actions need to be taken? What changes need to be made? What are we prepared to let go? Can't have everything. Now I want to give you a beautiful prayer. I told you that I take people to China. A Buddhist monk practicing the gift of intuition came over to me when I was in the temple with the American people at the Forbidden City, and he brought me this prayer. This is the prayer he brought. This is their Lord's Prayer. This is their, if you're a Buddhist, this is their serenity prayer. If you have got, by the way, the wisdom of letting go, if you've got the book, this one, the wisdom of letting go, you don't write this down. So it's in the front of the book. Now, I want you to listen to it before I say it, and then I want you to say it with me. It's powerful. Every Buddhist says this prayer as they go into the temple. Let all things be healthy. Let all things be peaceful. Be sure to count your blessings at least once a day. Forgive those who have hurt you and those who have offended you, but forgive yourself for what you have done. And let go of what you have failed to do. That which is done, there's no need to speak of. That which is past, there's no need to blame. Have self-control, self-knowledge, self-respect, the courage to dare. Be tranquil, and the light of intelligence will shine. Strive to make the spot where you stand beautiful. Then beauty and harmony will follow you in all your ways and through all your days. Amen. Beautiful, yes? Will you say it with me, please? And by the way, as we say this prayer, I want you to think about somebody who is special in your life and bring them spiritually into this. Somebody maybe who you have had to let go. Maybe a love. Maybe a love that you had years ago. Bring into this room parent, father, mother who's now died and at rest. Maybe there was pain, misunderstanding and abuse. Bring them to this room. Some of you have friends, children, grandchildren, separated a long time. They're not here with us now. There's a lot of pain. We bring them to this room. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, yourself. Because in so many cases we have been our biggest problem. Nobody has hurt you like you hurt you. So bringing the living and the dead, we say together, let all things be healthy. Let all things be peaceful. Be sure to count your blessings at least once a day. Forgive those who have hurt you and those who have offended you. But forgive yourself what you have done. And let go of what you have failed to do. That which is done, there's no need to speak of. That which is past, there's no need to blame. Have self-respect, self-knowledge, self-respect, the courage to dare. Be tranquil, the light of intelligence will shine. Strive to make the spot where you stand beautiful. Then beauty and harmony will follow you. Oh, your days. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now towards the end of what I've done. I gave you a process, and the process is stop, look, change. Whether it is food, whether it is alcohol, whether it is a relationship, doesn't really matter what it is. Sometimes we have to let go of the old God in order to embrace the new God. How can we ever get along together if we don't let go of the racism and sexism that's divided us? And so as we come to the end of this, every speaker has to find time, as I will, for questions and answers. We will probably stop this tape now